True. Nervous, very, very dreadfully nervous I had been and am. But why will you say that I am mad? The disease had sharpened my senses, not dulled, not destroyed them. Above all was my sense of hearing acute. I heard whole things in heaven and the earth. I heard many things in hell. How then am I mad? Hearken, and observe how calmly, how healthily I can tell you the entire story. Now, it is impossible to say how the idea first entered my mind, but once conceived, it haunted me day and night. Object there was none, passion there was none. I loved the old man. He had never wronged me, he had never given me insult. For his gold I had no desire. I think it was his eye. Yes, it was this. Oh, one of his eyes resembled that of a vulture, a pale blue eye with a film over it, that whenever it fell upon me, my blood ran cold. And so, by degrees, very gradually, I had made up my mind to take the life of the old man and thus rid myself of the eye forever. Now, this is the point. You fancy me mad. Madmen know nothing. But you should have seen me. You should have seen how wisely I proceeded, with what caution, what foresight, what dissimulation I went to work. I was never kinder to the old man than during the entire week before I killed him, and every night, just at midnight, I turned the latch on his door and opened it. Very, very gently. I opened it just so much that I could stick a dark lantern in there, closed, all closed. And when I had made an opening sufficient for the lantern, I thrust my head in. You would have laughed to see how cunningly I thrust it in. I moved it slowly, very, very slowly. It took me an hour to put my head in so far that I could see the old man as he lay upon his bed. Would a madman have been so wise as this? And then when I had my head in, I undid the lantern cautiously, very, very cautiously, for the hinges creaked. I undid it just so much that a single dim ray fell upon the vulture eye. And this I did for 7 long nights, every night, just at midnight. But I always found the vulture eye closed, and so it was impossible to do the work, for it was not the old man who vexed me, but his evil eye. And every morning when day broke, I went boldly into his chamber, speaking courageously to him, calling his name in a hearty tone, and inquiring how he has passed the night. So you see, he would have been a very profound man indeed to suspect that every night, just at 12, I looked in upon him as he slept. Upon the 8th night, I was more than usually cautious in opening the door. A watch's minute hand moved more quickly than did mine. And never before that night had I felt the extent of mine own powers, of my sagacity, to think that there I was, opening his door little by little, and for him not to even dream or suspect of my secret deeds or thoughts. I chuckled fairly at the idea. Perhaps he heard me, for he moved suddenly on the bed as if startled. Now, you may think that I drew back, but no. For the room was black as pitch with a thick darkness, for the shutters were close fastened through fear of robbers, so I know that he could not see me. So I kept pressing it on steadily. I had my head in the room and was about to undo the lantern when my thumb slipped on the tin fastening, and the old man sprang up in bed, crying out, "Who's there?" I kept quite still and did not move a muscle. For a whole hour I did not move, and in that time I did not hear him lie down. He was lying up in bed listening, just as I had done night after night, hearkening to the death watches in the walls. Presently I heard a slight groan, and I knew that it was the groan of mortal terror. It was not a groan of pain or of grief, oh no. It was a low, stifled sound that arises from the bottom of the soul when overcharged with awe. I knew that sound well. Many a night, just at midnight, while the whole world slept, the same sound has arose from the bottom of my own bosom, deepening with its dreadful echo the terrors that distracted me. I knew it well. I knew what the old man felt, and pitied him. Although I chuckled at heart. I knew that he had been lying awake ever since the first slight noise. His fears had been ever since growing upon him. He had been trying to fancy them causeless. He had been saying to himself, it is nothing but wind in the chimney, or it is only a mouse crossing the floor, or it is merely a cricket which has made a single chirp. Yes, he's been trying to comfort himself with these suppositions, but he has found all in vain, because death, in approaching him, had stalked with its black shadow before him, enveloping the victim, and it was under the unperceived influence of this shadow that caused him to feel, though he could neither see nor hear me, but to feel the presence of my head in the room. When I had waited very patiently for a very long time without hearing him lie down, I resolved to open a very, very little crevice in the lantern. So I opened it stealthily. Oh, you cannot imagine how stealthily, until at length a single dim ray, like the thread of a spider, shot from the lantern and fell directly upon the vulture eye. And it was open. It was wide open, and I saw it all in a perfect distinctness. A dull blue with the hideous veil over it, chilled the very marrow in my bones. But I could see nothing else of the old man's face or person, for I directed the ray as if by instinct, precisely upon the damned spot. And have I not told you that what you mistake for madness is but an over-acuteness of the senses? Now I say came to my ears a low, dull, quick sound, much such a watch makes when enveloped in cotton. I knew that sound well, too. It was the beating of the old man's heart, and it increased my fury, such as the beating of a drum stimulates a soldier into courage. But even yet, I refrained and kept still. I scarcely moved. I tried to hold the lantern motionless. I tried how steadily I could maintain the ray upon the vulture eye. Meantime, the hellish tattoo of the heart quickened. It grew quicker and louder every instant. The old man's terror must have been extreme. It grew louder, I say, louder. And have I not told you that I'm nervous? So I am. And now, at the dead hour of the night, amidst the dreadful silence of that house, so strange a noise as this excited me to uncontrollable terror. But even yet, I refrained and kept still. Meantime, the beating grew louder and louder. I thought the heart must burst, and now a new anxiety seized me. The sound would be heard by a neighbor. The old man's hour had come. With a loud yell, I threw open the lantern and leaped into the room. The old man shrieked once only. In an instant, I dragged him to the floor. I pulled the heavy bed over him. I then sat upon the bed and smiled gaily to find the deed so far done. But for many moments longer, the heart beat on with a muffled sound. This, however, did not vex me, for I knew the sound would not be heard by a neighbor. And at length, it ceased. The old man was dead. I pulled off the mattress and examined the corpse. Yes, he was stone dead. I placed my hand upon his heart. There was no pulsation. Yes, he was stone dead. The eye would trouble me no more. Now, if you still think I'm mad, you will think so no longer when I describe to you the precautions I took in the concealment of the body. The night waned and I worked in haste but silently, First of all, I dismembered the corpse. I cut off the arms and the legs and the head. I then pulled up 3 boards from the flooring of the chamber and deposited all between the scantlings. I then replaced the planks so carefully, so cunningly, that no human eye, no, not even his, could have detected anything wrong. And there was nothing to wash out, no stain of any kind, no blood spot, whatever. I had been too wary for that. A tuppet got it all. And when I had made an end of these labors, it was 4 o'clock, still dark as midnight. And as the bell sounded the hour, a knocking came at the street door. I went out to open with a light heart, for what had I now to fear? And there entered before me 3 gentlemen who introduced themselves with perfect suavity as officers of the police. A shriek had been heard in the middle of the night. Suspicion of foul play aroused. Some information lodged at the police office, and they, the officers, had been deputed to search the premises. I smiled. For what had I now to fear? I bade the gentlemen welcome. The shriek, I said, was my own inner dream, the old man absent in the country. I took my visitors all over the house. I led them at length to his chamber. I showed them his treasures, secure, undisturbed, and in the wild enthusiasm of my confidence, I brought chairs into the room and required them here to rest from their fatigues, while I, in the wild audacity of my perfect triumph, placed my own seat directly above the spot beneath which reposed the corpse of the victim. The officers were satisfied. My manner had convinced them. They sat, and while I answered cheerily, they chatted of familiar things. Ere long, I felt myself growing ill and wished them gone. My head ached, and I fancied a ringing in my ears. But still they sat and still chatted, but the noise continued. It continued and became more distinct. I talked more fluently to get rid of the feeling, but it continued and gained definiteness until, at length, I found that the noise was not coming from within my ears. No doubt I now grew very pale. I talked more freely and more fluently to get rid of the feeling, but the noise continually increased. And what could I do? It was the low, dull, quick sound much such a watch makes when enveloped in cotton. I gasped for breath, but the officers heard it not. I talked more quickly, more vehemently, but the noise steadily increased. I rose and argued about trifles in a heightened key, but the noise steadily increased. Why would they not be gone? I paced to and fro with heavy strides, as if excited to fury by the observations of the men, but the noise steadily increased. I foamed, I raved, I swore, I swung the chair upon which I had been sitting and grated it upon the floorboards, but the noise arose over all and steadily increased. And still they chatted pleasantly and smiled. Was it possible they heard it not? Almighty God, no. They heard. They suspected. They knew. They were making a mockery of my horror. This I thought, in this I think. But anything was better than this agony. Anything more tolerable than this derision. I thought I must either scream or die. And now, again, hark, louder, 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 louder! Villains! I shrieked! Dissemble no more, I admit the deed! Tear up the planks, here! It is the beating of his hideous heart.